Hey, g'day. You're with your host Matt and Steve-O today for the ATP Project, and today we're talking about sugar hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy.
We're talking about the sugar taxes and whether we think it's a good idea. We're going to discuss whether we think, does sugar cause disease? Does fat cause disease? What kind of is the ratios that people are doing? What have we been doing for the last 50 years to create this epidemic that requires this sugar tax? How did we get to this place where we are told to eat a certain amount of sugar this whole time, and then when we get sick, now we're told we're going to pay a tax to eat those same sugars that we're told we have to eat?
I'm going to tell you later that sugar's not bad for you at all. It doesn't cause diabetes, and everyone thinks the same.
That's the absolute consensus, is
Absolute consensus.
Oh, man, this is going to be fun. Now, Jeff's not here today because it's a little bit controversial, a little bit of conspiracy, possibly alarmist and sensationalist, and he's not into that sort of shit.
No, he's not.
So you go, oh, I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to do it. We're brave. We may disappear after this once we let you know some of these things, but should be apples.
Sugar tax sounds like a good idea because when you think about it, well, if I get the tax revenue from it, it'd be great. I mean, so if I'm not, if I was a government and I was going, everyone's eating sugar, and if I tax that, I could palm that off as being a health thing and get more money out of it. So, there's a pro to that. Yeah. I guess, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing that's a little bit strange. So, as a naturopath, and you've been working more heavily in the health industry even than me across the board, with your association memberships and those sort of things. You deal a lot more with dietitians and policy making and therapeutic goods administrations and these sort of places where you get involved in some policy making discussions.
We do, yeah.
And you've been involved in all these discussions where they're telling us that we should be eating 60% of our calories should be coming from carbs.
Yeah.
And 25%, that is fine to come from sugar.
Yes.
Like added sugar. And there's all these policies. And we've got this food pyramid, which is very heavily weighted towards sugar and eating carbohydrate foods. So the government's been telling us to eat sugar this whole time. And now they're telling us, now that we're addicted to the sugar, because it's extremely addictive, now that we've got all these bad habits, now that we've forgotten what real food is and we're reliant on these packaged products, we've been trained to have this thing called a bliss point, look for a certain amount of sweetness and taste sensation. So now that we're kind of stuck in this mode, and we have been doing it for a couple of generations now, they want to implement a tax. Now, how's that going to fix it, Steve?
Well, a tax is theoretically going to fix it by upping the price of your can of whatever, and then, of course, you're going to less likely to buy it. So that's allegedly, quote, going to fix it. And then the tax, extra dollars, is, quote, again, allegedly going to go into the health budget and fix the excess sugar. But the problem with a taxing on a certain food is, does it really, taxing cigarettes is, it's got a huge amount of tax on it. But if you put say a 20% tax on a can of Coke, which is, say, $1, that's 20 cents. Now, a lot of people can afford the extra 20 cents. So will it change habits at 20%?
How old are you, Steve?
49.
Yeah. So Coke hasn't been $1 for a while. So a can of Coke, you might pay like $5. So we're talking about jacking it up to $6.
What about the soft drinks, the big boxes you get from Woolies and that?
Oh, they're cheap. So if you want to buy a couple of litres, it's cheap. Yeah. If you want to buy half a litre, it's quite expensive. So they're encouraging you to buy bulk there.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, because I've seen memes where people go, I live in America, or I live in the cities of Australia. It costs me this much to have a meal full of vegetables and eat fruit, and it costs me this much to buy Maccas. So you're saying if we add more tax, so the government, not you, the government's saying that if we tax the junk food, make that more expensive, like the health food is. So if we make junk food as expensive as health food, we'll buy the health food because we only eat the junk food because it's cheaper.
Yeah, so that's the theory.
A lot of people
say that. That's another theory. And here's the issue with that, though. The typical, and I'm going to use statistics, and there's exceptions to this rule, but typically people who drink junk food and eat junk food, and drink Coke and that sort of thing are usually a lower socioeconomic group. So if you increase the price of those foods, it will harm their budgets if they continue with this practice. Yeah, like smoking is typically a lower socioeconomic thing. It's just statistics. So it will harm the income.
So hit them where it hurts. So the low socioeconomic people, if you make junk food more expensive, in line with health food, they're going to be more inclined to eat health food?
Well, you hope so. But
that's the plan.
I don't think 20% tax on sugar will achieve that because it won't go far enough.
It's not like cigarettes. Like, for example, in Australia, cigarettes might have been $30 or something like that, and now they're $40.
Yeah.
So like it's a larger chunk. But if you're looking at a soft drink going from $4 to $5, it's not going to make much difference, especially if you can buy the 2 litre one still for $2.
Yeah.
Which might go up to, you know what I mean?
$2.20,
yeah.
$2.40, yeah. So
hey, remember those stats? Remember we were working that other dodgy company a few years ago? And remember those stats that come out from Woolies and that? Remember we got those stats of what the top 10...
Yeah.
The top 20 or something. And I'm very sure the top 10 were all Coca-Cola.
They were all Coke and Coke
Different
products.
versions of Coke products were the top 10 purchases out of Woolworths and everything like that.
Well, they have a soft drink aisle at Woolies.
Have you been down that soft drink aisle? I mean, typically we try to go around the outside, but when we do go up and down, it's really hard to walk up and down that aisle without getting hit in the head by a ticket.
I know. And
for a thing that's 50% off.
And my nuts are in that aisle, actually.
You left them there?
Yeah, no, the nuts that I eat, the ones that I put in my mouth. I mean, the ones that, the nuts that are healthy nuts.
So you left your nuts in the aisle. So that's at least you know where you left them.
It's always good to know that,
So when you go back into that aisle to find your nuts,
yes,
what you'll notice is the whole aisle's full of 50% off.
Yes.
So let's whack a sugar tax on our Coca-Cola. We'll jack it up, up the price by 20%. Then we'll discount it 50% to make sure everyone's capable of buying it.
Yes. So and also, I mean, it's very, very scary because, as I said to you, the lower socioeconomic people, and there was a study done recently with Aboriginal population in Australia, our Indigenous population, and they consume huge amounts of soft drink.
Break it down, Steve.
Sure.
Not like rap style.
No, there's a paper there I can see that I gave to you that's got all the stats.
This is my stats. No.
Yeah, that one.
Where is this bloody?
There it is.
I've scribbled all over it.
You have scribbled all over it.
I've written things like addictions and 50,000 years of getting used to eating a high-protein diet, high-fat, high-protein diet. There you go.
Sure.
What do you want to know?
The great stats are the ones I highlighted here, which says that basically... they actually, of their energy intake, like their total energy intake, 25 to 34% of their total energy intake comes from sugar.
Refined sugar. When you say sugar, you're not talking carbs.
No.
Because, there's that confusion. So just for the listeners, let's break it quickly down. So when we talk about carbohydrates, these carbohydrates may be sugars in the forms of starches and fructose and other forms of glucose and that are found within the food, in conjunction with things like fibre, modbiotic, polyphenols, and all that sort of stuff, or it may be taken from another industry where they extract that sugar cane juice, for example, where they take the sugar out of that food, take away all the fibre and modbiotics and give it to you in a convenient form that you can add it to a soft drink or add it to your cereals or add it to your cup of coffee. So you're saying of these people, the carbohydrate component that they eat, 30% of their total calories.
Total calorie intake.
Not just their carbohydrate.
Total calorie intake.
So 30% of their total calorie intake on average comes from sugar that has been added to a product in the manufacturing process or onto their just before eating it.
It's about a third of their diet is sugar, and of that third, about 71% is soft drink.
Holy hell.
Yes. So it's added sugars, but most of that is soft drink.
Wow.
So about a third of their diet is almost a quarter of it is soft drink from calories. So if you're having a 2,000 calorie a day, then, I'll say 3,000 is the average sort of thing. Then about 750 calories comes from sugar, like sweet drinks. So if you break that down even further, remember there's about 4 calories per gram. So if you round it off, it's about 200 grams of sugar just from soft drinks every day.
How much money do they spend on actual fruit and vegetables? What percentage comes from that? Because this is the thing. Because we're talking money here. Yeah. We're talking sugar tax. So these people, they insist. What we've got is an indigenous group of Aboriginals in Australia. Now, the thing that I hate about this is what's happened within this particular group is they have, for 50,000 years, they've been hunting and gathering. And the Australian, what's available in Australia is a lot of fat, a lot of protein. There's bugger all sugar. I mean, seriously, the only sweet sugars and that, apart from honeys and that, would be digging a hole for an hour to find the arse of an ant and eat the honey out of that. So what I'm saying is these guys did not have that bliss point.
No.
They did not have exposure to these sugars that would create these serotonin release. That's why I was talking about addictions, because sugar is addictive.
Oh, it's huge.
More addictive than anything else.
It's funny you should say that. Just on addictions, the new addiction manual, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is a mental health manual, version 5 came out and removed sugar as an addictive agent.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How convenient.
So now the psychologists that use this thing as their Bible, there is no such thing as sugar addiction. They just took it out of the book.
Because they got us all addicted to it with the stupid food pyramids and these bliss points. And bliss points like just hitting this nice flavour profile on your tongue that we've all now become accustomed to wanting. So they go and get us addicted to these sugars, and then they're going to tax it. So these
Aboriginal.
The Aboriginal. So what are they spending their money on? Because we're talking about money.
Yep, 2.2% was spent on fruit, and 5.4% was spent on vegetables.
Bloody hell. Does it say how much was spent on the soft drink and that then?
No, it didn't say how much.
Calories?
Didn't know how much. And they were also deficient in protein. And this is, of course, the Medical Journal of Australia, published 2013.
And now this is the particular group, population group within Australia that has massive issues with diabetes, cardiovascular and obesity. And tooth decay and all of those sort of things that's associated with sugar. And these people are basically eating the sugar, the diet that has been recommended to us.
Hang on. Is sugar really associated with diabetes? I thought there was
Okay, we better acknowledge that because we did mention there's an absolute consensus, which to me, my understanding of an absolute consensus is, so all medical professionals agree?
Yeah. Like you and I.
Oh, have I got your piece of paper?
It's right there. That's
it.
You
read it. You're good at reading.
All right, I'll read out. This is from a very popular... this is from a dietitian out. Now, look, I've got a disclosure. I'm not a huge fan of the philosophy of dietetics. You know what I mean? I'm not a fan of what they recommend.
Hang on. No, you see, you got to put these... You're too nice. So what you're not a fan of is a group of professionals that are trained by the government to promote their agenda.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
So basically, if you've got the government out there saying...
Yes.
30% of your calories from sugar's fine, 60% of your calories from carbohydrates, these are the people paid by the government or paid by us to tell them what the government wants them to say. Absolutely.
And this is the statement, and I'll read this to you. And it's a very popular book in the GI and diabetes book. So, it says, does sugar cause diabetes? The answer is no. There is absolute consensus that sugar in food does not cause diabetes. Full stop.
Yeah. So, how do we diagnose diabetes?
Yeah, well...
You measure sugar in your blood. Maybe that's what she's saying. She's going, no, diabetes is sugar in the blood, not sugar in my banana.
Well,
I've got a diabetic banana.
You can talk about your diabetic banana all you want.
But it'll fall off. Rot and fall off.
You got to remember that the diabetes is elevated blood sugars that are not caused by just having a Mars bar. AM fasting, sugars is diabetes.
You haven't eaten for 12 hours.
Exactly. So your liver's insulin resistant and makes more sugar because it believes you're starving. And that's diabetes, type 2 diabetes, most common cause diabetes. About 1 million Australians have it. And sugar has nothing to do with the sugar levels of your blood.
Yeah. On the same... Oh, man.
How does...
I got this other piece of paper. I can't find it. It's one of these. But no, one of these pieces of paper here, that, talking about the same bloody thing.
Yeah.
It was saying that the textbooks are saying that when you eat sugar, that sugar goes into your blood.
Oh.
And contributes to the blood sugar that you're measuring.
You're funny about that.
That's the nutritional textbooks.
Yeah.
They're saying that when you eat sugar... They go into your blood, and insulin's job is to take that sugar out. If insulin doesn't work, then that sugar stays in your blood, and it's that sugar that you've eaten goes into your blood that causes high blood sugar in certain circumstances, except first thing in the morning when you're fasting.
Yeah, and this is amazing because this is not written by some online blog, blah, 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 which you forgive because they're not trained. This is a trained dietitian, a professor of nutrition at Sydney University. And do you want me to, I can almost... read it again. It's right here. It's not. I'm not misquoting her and anything like that. She's absolutely. There is absolute consensus that sugar in food does not cause diabetes.
All right.
I can't even say it anymore.
So anyway, let's just forget about it. The truth is, sugar does cause problems.
Sure, it does.
So via multiple mechanisms.
Multiple.
Now, in the second half of this podcast, I've got to be really well behaved today because I've got a whole heap of rant not rant, but
no.
I get people think I'm a conspiracy theorist, but it's only until it gets published as a conspiracy fact.
It's
and the funny thing, so when something becomes a conspiracy fact is when the bloody thing gets published and still can't make the news.
Yes.
But what's on the news is sugar taxing. So I am going to talk about the history of how we got to this point.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the sugar lobby, the Sugar Association, the World Health Organization, Congress funding, all of that. So we're going to have a chat about that towards the end. I don't want to get too excited with it now.
Sugar paradox.
But the problem is a lot of our data from the last 50 years is either hidden or biased or dodgy. And every time there's a good paper that we do proper analysis, what they'll do is they'll try to discredit the author, they'll discredit the paper, so we basically forget about it, and then they pump out stupid statements like that, that no, sugar doesn't cause these things.
It's sad. And you know, there was that paper recently in JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, which highlighted those, 50 years ago where there was a massive cover-up, and then before that there was a dude called Ansel Keys who to his credit, was, probably a pioneer of his time, and he looked at 7 countries and said, look, there's a correlation between animal fat and heart disease, and sugar was ignored. And so, he also, speaking of ignored, he ignored the other 15 countries, by the way.
So what happened? So there was, hang on. So
at the time, there was data available for 22 countries, around the world.
Yeah.
And he picked,
7.
selected 7 of them that happened to support his hypothesis. Yeah. And surprisingly, the other ones were against his hypothesis.
Yeah.
So, and when I was doing my PhD in cardiology, that my cardiology lecturer at that time quoted that study to me, and I said, really? Because that's the most discredited research.
Yeah.
And he was a cardiologist, and that's scary. Because
I know.
He was saying that you've got to go low fat.
Yeah.
Now, low fat to the average Joe Smog out there, 6-pack, who goes to the supermarket aisle, and let's say they've got kids. Kids have got to eat breakfast cereal. We know that's good for them with cow's milk. Oh, gee.
Yeah.
But anyway, you go there and you see Fruit Loops. That's got colour. That's a fruit. And,
that's right.
And you pour that in there, and then you pour the milk in there. It's quick, easy, cheap. You don't add sugar to that. You don't add sugar.
No, lucky.
No, because it's already 60% sugar.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah,
because that fits in with the food pyramid. That's actually becomes that's what they want us to have, 60%.
Absolutely.
So this is crazy. So we've had all this. This is a problem. So we've got all of this data, this epidemiological studies, these big meta-analysis, gathering all this data. Then they just pick and choose what they want to present.
Yes.
There's been some other people, though, through history, I'll talk about them in a sec, that have been excellent researchers, just genuinely curious, have been totally destroyed and discredited. That way their science gets thrown out with it. But so, with sugar definitely contributes to heart disease, but we need to understand the difference. So what has happened to our sugar in the last 50 years is weird things have changed. I know we've talked a lot about this when we talk about gut health, microbiome. We've talked a lot about this with obesities and cardiovascular disease and all that sort of stuff. But understand what we're finding is all the research says this. It's probably a bit of a big statement. That was like a dietitian style statement. There's absolute consensus. No. What it does show, there's a consistent trend that shows that sugar that's found inside foods, like starches, other forms of glucose, fructose, those sort of things that are found inside foods and eaten as part of a whole food, whether that's a cereal, a grain, a legume, fruit and vegetables, those sort of things, aren't as bad for you as refined sugar.
Clearly.
So all the studies show that if you take the sugar out of its natural matrix of sugar plus fiber plus polyphenols plus vitamins and nutrients, if you take sugar out of that and give it to someone as an empty calorie, it can contribute to heart disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, all that sort of stuff. It does that through multiple mechanisms, directly through the blood with insulin secretions, glycemic indexes, which spins me out about this person that's famous for GI and says sugar's fine. That's her job.
Well, actually...
Anyway, imagine being having one job and suck at it.
Terrible.
But I don't mean to be rude, but it's an idiot. If you have... so when you take these things out, you refine these sugars, they're bad for you. Yeah. But when they're found naturally as part of a plant, because it's the fiber, the modbiotic polyphenols and everything, it's gone. So the big point is all the research is showing that modbiotics can offset some of the bad things of refined sugars, or don't do the refined sugars. use the sugars as part of a food that naturally contains those things.
Absolutely.
That's the big thing that's changed over 50 years.
Yes.
The sugar levels, it's debatable whether they've gone up or down. Some people think that we're eating less sugar. Some people think we're eating more sugar. But what definitely has changed is the ratios between the sugar component, the glucose, fructose components, and the fibre and all the polyphenols.
And exactly. And also refined carbohydrates like, I pick on Wheat Bix all the time. That turns into sugar and that's got no nutrients. It's toasted, it's refined, hell, polyphenols are gone, everything's gone. And so that's kind of the same. So really these it's the refined carbohydrates and they're the ones that have the Wheat Bix has the 5-star tick on it.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about that then.
Oh, okay.
So we've had these, for the last... 50 years?
Yep.
So leading up to this time where they say now they want to tax our sugar for us to buy products that have got added sugar to it, which is not that big a deal. I just don't, it's things stupid to talk more about. So before that, they've been doing the food pyramid.
Yes.
So they've been saying eat 60% of your calories from carbs.
Yes.
Then they said in amongst that, it's fine if 20%, 25% of your total carbs come from table sugar. You've just shown the Aboriginal statistics that confirm that that's what they've been doing. They've been following that food pyramid and the highest rates of diabetes, obesity,
huge
cardiovascular disease in Australia. They've been following those instructions better than anyone, according to your stats you listed off here.
Yeah.
So apart from the food pyramid, then the industry's telling us to eat sugars.
Yes.
The industry's telling us what we need to give us energy and motivation and drive and that sort of thing. There's all these industry initiatives then, like the health ticks, the red, green, yellows, the health star rating, so Milo and that sort of stuff, which is just a sugary beverage, 4.5 stars. Wheat Bix, 5-star.
Yeah, it's 5-star.
Got the fibre as well.
It's square too. That makes it another star if you turn it into a square.
That's awesome.
And make it really dry and toasted and rectangular. It's as processed as you can get.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So then we got the Health Heart Foundation ticks we don't talk about anymore because you could buy those.
Yeah.
But the red, green, yellow thing they're trying to bring in through the UK now to show people what's a good food and a bad food.
Yep.
And it's all based on fat.
Oh.
So these things are based... So they're going and telling us to avoid fat, eat sugar.
Yeah.
And now we've got all these sickness. They're going to say, okay, we're going to tax you to stop you from purchasing the products that have got sugar in it.
All right. So based on that, you mentioned the red, yellow, green based on fat. So what would be the worst food would therefore be an absolute pure liquid fat, wouldn't it?
Oh, and I think it's salt as well. So they got salts and fats, and then maybe there's probably a lot of variables in it. But
let's just talk about the fat thing for a sec, because if you add fat to a diet, this only came out this week. It's published in the New England Journal of Medicine that if you add fat to a diet, olive oil or nuts, it reduces heart disease. It's for primary prevention of cardiovascular disease of the Mediterranean diet. And everyone knows Mediterranean diets are good and adding nuts.
So they're what about 30%?
Oh, a bit higher, 40% these
40% fat.
So it's much higher in fat, and they've added it.
Just again, the recommendation is 10%.
Yeah.
So the government's been telling us, and what we've been trying to do to be healthy for 50 years is 10% fat.
Yeah, they've upped it to 30, but these guys are way beyond that because they even add fat. Like nuts is about 50 to 70% fat. So they added these fats, and this study was great. It's a huge study, and it was done, 7,447 participants, aged about 65 on average. They gave them all these diets, and they had to stop the trial early though, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Hang on. What? So
these
people are having a high-fat diet.
Yeah.
To check to see if they're getting heart disease. Were they dying?
Compared to the control group, which has had a normal diet.
Yeah.
They had to stop the diet because the olive oil and the nut group were surviving much, much longer, and it was unethical to continue given the benefits because you had to stop and say...
So normally they conduct a trial because your intervention's killing people.
Yes.
So you're trying to tell me that the control group were dying.
Yes.
So they had to stop the trial because they were actually discouraging the control people from eating good, healthy fats.
Yeah.
So the ethics committee said, you can't run a trial where you're killing people by asking them to eat 10% fat. Is that what you're saying?
They gave them the government guideline and it was killing them. And they had
to can the trial.
But the
government continues to pump out these guidelines.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely insane. It was a beautifully designed trial. I went through it. They controlled for all the variables. They made sure they randomised the participants, same age, same smoking status, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. Really good, beautifully. That's what made it New England Journal of Medicine, I guess. And they had to stop the trial because it was too beneficial for them. The last time they stopped the trial,
because it wasn't fair to the control group that were missing out.
The last time they stopped, I remember the last time they stopped the trial, I remember was the Women's Health Initiative when they were giving the pill, HRT, and that stopped trial because they were dying too fast.
They were killing people. But that's what normally. That's what I'm saying. Normally they stop a trial because your intervention's killing people. But you're saying it was the group that were following the government intervention were dying, and they said this isn't fair because we're restricting from eating oils that will save them.
And the British Journal of Nutrition, when they did a pilot trial, it lasted for 6 days because the triglycerides went up by 30% and stopped the trial. So because the Heart Foundation,
and that was the American Heart Association diet. That diet had been the recommended diet for 50 years before the trial.
Yep.
So they did the American Heart Association diet, which is 10% fat diet, ran for 50 years before they decided to do a study on what happens if you have a 10% diet. Their triglycerides went up so much in 6 days that they canned the trial.
Absolutely.
And so you can't live on 10% fat.
No, because your body makes it.
Yet the government insists that we do.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Now, and this is why, too, this is the bullshit thing, because they simplify things too much because they've gone through and they said, look, all there is protein, carb, and fat.
Yeah.
Protein needs to be adequate.
Yep, adequate.
So protein adequate, and they've just said that's easy. Let's stop talking about protein now. So it's just protein adequate. Yeah. And now and what's the protein adequate? What's that running at 20% of your calories? They just make up a joke.
Yeah, about 20.
Yeah, something like that. And then when they go, okay, so we've got 80% left to split between the carb and fat groups. Mm-hmm. Now, not only are they carb and fat food groups, but they're competing businesses.
Yeah,
so this is where it gets murky. Yeah. So they basically split between these last few calories and say, right, we're going to give this much to these guys, this much to these guys, and then these guys are arguing over it, who gets the government recommendation for their business.
Yes. Amazing. Now, I mean, you touched on GI before.
Yeah.
And glycemic index. Now, a lot of people, the perception out there is glycemic index is the rate in which blood sugar levels rise when you eat a carbohydrate. Okay, GI index. It's glycemic index, and everyone thinks that's the great thing. And our friend dietitian there loves it. Guess what? If you take pure corn syrup fructose, right?
Yeah.
The glycemic index of that is about 16 to 20. It's extraordinarily healthy.
Say it again.
That if pure fructose or corn syrup, pure fructose, like out of white stuff and liquid stuff, that has got a GI of 16 to 20 and is classed as a very healthy carbohydrate.
Wow, is that the same stuff we call high fructose corn syrup? High fructose corn syrup
has
got a very low GI.
Correct. Fructose is extraordinarily low GI.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and so they're saying that. But the whole concept of the GI, is talking about the rate at which insulin's released in response to that food.
Yes.
And that contributes to inflammation and arteries and all that sort of stuff. So the food that we've linked to most of these health problems, like the evil thing, this high fructose corn syrup, it's actually got very low GI, and according to GI theory, it's fine.
Absolutely fine.
The thing that always spun me out about glycemic index was that the funny statement I heard myself saying. I probably said it for like 5-10 years before I actually heard myself say it one day and gone, oh, hang on, there's probably an easy way to explain this. What I used to do is say, I can lower the GI of any food you consume by combining it with protein, fat, and fibre.
Yeah, that's about it.
What did I say before the macros we're talking about? We weren't talking about carbs. And so basically, I can lower your GI by lowering your carbs.
Yes, exactly.
Or increasing in proportion protein, fat,
because it slows down digestion.
Yeah. So you basically sit there going, oh, I just answered the same question. The whole key to having low GI is to eat less. And that's when we're talking about glycemic load.
Yes, and that's an important one. I'll ask you another question, Matt, without notice. Have you ever eaten a carrot?
I have.
Oh, my God, you're going to die. GI of over 90, mate, steamed carrots.
Yeah.
Don't touch poisonous things.
Yeah, confectionery.
Stick to, fructose.
Well, I might have to.
Well, actually, the reason why GI...
So GI is not that important.
No, it's not important. The reason why GI is low for fructose, if you want to know, is because it stimulates the liver to make triglycerides, fats. So it doesn't turn into glucose, it turns into fats in your blood. And the bad fat, palmitic acid.
Oh, so insulin's not required. It just goes straight to the
fat.
Into fat.
Of course, it's fatty liver.
That's messed up.
Well, a lot of people have high fructose corn syrup and have, lots of sugar in their diet.
And this has been the whole reason why they always thought fat caused heart disease, because when they opened up an artery, they squeezed fat out of it.
Yeah, of course.
And they go, oh, look at this fat that's just accumulating in this. But what you're saying is that we've got sugars that'll just convert to create that fat in the arteries.
That's exactly what I mean, where else are you going to put, if you had a can of Coke or whatever, or a bowl of Wheat Bix, and you made all this sugar out of that, and, it's about 70% sugar in Wheat Bix, or it turns into sugar, where does it all go?
I know it gives me enough energy for about 3 to 4 hours to do intense physical activity, I also know within half an hour of eating I'm ready for bed.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going into giving me a heap of energy.
No,
it's
it doesn't give you anything. It actually causes leptin resistance and all sorts of hunger.
So does fat causes? So we know sugar causes disease. So therefore, a sugar tax is a great idea. Yeah. Does fat cause disease? Maybe we should tax that too.
If you add it in the diet like this, the good fats, you're fine.
Yep.
Depends on what fat you're talking about. Because if it's got a tick from the Heart Foundation like margarine, it's extraordinarily dangerous.
So the tick means you get heart disease?
Yeah, so I reckon. It's great. Well, how many ticks have you seen on your broccoli?
So you're talking about saturated fat, trans fats.
Trans fats are bad.
So when we talk about saturated fats and unsaturated fats, the main difference is saturated is solid at room temperature.
Correct, that's the definition.
And unsaturated is that
your chemistry.
It's liquid at room temperature.
Exactly.
So if you've got a hardening fat within your body, it's more likely to be the saturated ones.
I can feel a joke coming on.
Hardening fat in your body, and it's not my diabetic banana or your confectionery carrot. It's John. No.
Oh no, where is John today? Oh, he's not here. Yeah, that's right. He's off with
he's in denial
somewhere. Yeah,
he's in Egypt in denial.
It's funny. All right, let's talk about quickly saturated fats because everyone thinks they're bad. Okay, let's say have you ever eaten an apple, Matt?
I have eaten an apple too.
Because you know how the apples have got pectin-soluble fibre.
Yeah.
Guess what that breaks down to in your gut?
Tell me.
Butyric acid, propanoic acid, and valerianic acid, saturated fats. You're going to die.
And it's a very acidic diet. I'll probably have cancer.
Oh, yeah, the acidic diet thing. That's right.
No, I'm just playing with you. Sorry, I'm not going to digress.
Some saturated fats are bad. Usually the long ones, the chemically long ones, like palmatic acid, around 16 carbons is long. The shorter ones you find like in butter, butyric acid, and those sort of things. Because the Heart Foundation hates them, they must be good for you, so they are.
Wow.
There you go. So saturated fats I wouldn't worry about. Like coconuts.
So the studies show, so we got all these evidence from those where they compared all those diets with the Atkins diets, the Mediterranean diet. So we're looking at a fat level of 30 to 40% is healthy.
Yeah, it's about right.
As long as it's good fats.
Good fats.
So not the fats that have been made hard.
Yeah,
like a vegetable is liquid, but if you make it in margarine, it's hard.
Yeah, it's transfatting it, which means you translocate one of the carbons to the other side and all this stuff. Yeah. But the other bad thing is omega-6s, like too much of those aren't too good either because they've got a tick from the Heart Foundation as well.
Yeah, right. So that's where we're looking at cereals and grains. So for everyone out there, a very simple rule that I used to tell people, I'm telling you now, so I still tell people this. Most of the world's omega-3 oils comes from grass and plankton.
Yes.
Okay. So the animals that eat those are fine. Once those grass seed, they make the seeds from the grass is omega-6.
Yes.
So when we let our wheat grasses and everything go all the way through to seed, collect the seeds, we're getting omega-6 oils. But when we eat those grasses, or if we're a cow or something that eats those grasses, we fill up with omega-3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the problem with a lot of our diet being deficient in omega-3s because of a lot of our classic omega-3 sources are that because we don't eat a lot of grass and plankton ourselves, we typically eat other animals that do.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those animals that normally would be eating grass and plankton are taken off those and put onto grain feed lots.
Yes.
So we're getting the marbling in our meat the same as they're getting the marbling in their meat from the extra omega-6. And
if we eat a lot of grains, we'll marble ourselves and cause heart disease. Because remember, the Heart Foundation recommends a whole grain diet. Yeah. Very good for your heart.
And marbling in the meat is fat.
Yeah.
And it's like fat through your muscles, it's fat through your arteries, it's fat everywhere, and that contributes to insulin resistance, obesity, heart disease, diabetes.
All of that stuff. And by the way, there's a big study out last year on the low glycemic index for the treatment of cardiovascular disease. I'll just read the conclusion there. There is currently no evidence regarding the effects of low GI diets on cardiovascular disease events. Moreover, there is currently no convincing evidence that low GI diets have a clear beneficial effect on blood lipids or blood pressure parameters because it's a bogus number. Yep. And this was published back in the Cochrane Database Review middle of last year. So there's no evidence for low GI anyway because it's so variable.
Yeah.
I mean, carrots are bad and fructose is good. And it's like...
And also, too, it depends on you. If you're in a calorie deficit, if you're in a glycogen deficit, insulin's irrelevant.
Yeah.
This thing's going to use a GLUT4 transporter to put the sugar straight into where it's missing. Yeah. So the key is deplete the glycogen stores in the liver, deplete the glycogen stores in the muscle through exercise, and then your muscles and liver are saying, hey, man, I need some sugar because I burnt some. Yes. Can you give me some back? Yeah. Alternatively, you're loading sugar in and it goes to the fat.
Yeah, and remember, it's GLUT4 transporters in muscle, GLUT2 in the liver, and if you're exercising, adenosine monophosphate kinase is the enzyme that gets sugars into the body. So exercise is really good, particularly fasted. It's great to get rid of your sugars that way, or while you're, that's why people can have sugary drinks. The only time they really can is while they're exercising, halfway through a marathon or something. You can safely consume sugar. But, this whole GI thing is bogus because, remember, GI is measured on having 75 grams of food after a 10-hour fast on its own. How many times does anybody have 75 grams of one particular food after a 10-hour fast? So you must have it for breakfast. So nobody eats one food on its own. You put even Wheat Bix. It's just wheat, just stupid wheat. You have to put milk with it or something. You can't just have one food on its own. So GI is completely bogus.
You know it's messed up, man. When I was a kid, I was really crook. Like real sick with asthma and eczema. And they believed it was cow's milk was a contributing factor. And so there was a phase there where my breakfast in the hospital, because I spent a lot of time in hospital. So my hospital breakfast was Wheat Bix with sugar, because they give you the sugar, add it yourself. And I'm a kid, man. I'm about like a 3 or 4 year old kid with a bowl of sugar. And lucky me, I was the only kid in the whole children's part of that had their water, Wheat Bix with water. So they just tip some water on my Wheat Bix and then give me a bowl of sugar and say, just go for it. Just loading up this sugar, because otherwise your Wheat Bix and water's for shit.
Shit. I used to eat Wheat Bix every day. I used to put 1 teaspoon of sugar per Wheat Bix.
Well, all right.
So I'd have 10 Wheat Bix, I'd have 10 spoons of sugar.
Me too, man. I had this little strategy. Yeah, because I never eat soggy Wheat Bix. That's also how I remember northeast, southwest. But
never eat soggy.
But so I used to do the milk. The milk, it goes halfway up and then coat the top with sugar.
Yeah,
and then nail that. And then my parents said, because milk's going to give you asthma, so but a calcium was so important for my bones, so they made me drink goat's milk, which had equal amounts of lactose and same reaction. And now I hate goat everything. Anywho, let's talk about other things, because what sugar does cause the disease.
Yes.
Fat tax makes sense in that instance to discourage people.
Yep.
But let's talk about what's likely to happen. Healthy, good fats at 30 to 40% has been shown to be excellent.
Well, yeah.
And I'm going to, in the second half of this podcast, I'm going to tell you that we've known that since the 40s. And it's all been hidden.
Really?
And it's all bullshit, because it's all to do with industry and bribes and crap. And it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy fact, because it's published and still didn't make it.
You better have a published study in JAMA to show us that
I do. JAMA, master segue. Well done. We'll get to that one. So the studies are shown if you have a low-fat diet, so no good oils that control inflammatory processes and that sort of stuff. We don't have adequate fibre. Modbiotic compounds like polyphenols, glucans, that sort of stuff that control the gut and that control the GI and control the way our insulin and sugars and everything move through the body, improve insulin sensitivity, control inflammation, all those sort of things. So when you have refined, crappy sugar, it makes you sick.
Yeah, very much so.
So the goal is to tax people that are going to just add refined crappy sugar to the products. So as a manufacturer, as a food manufacturer, because at ATP Science, so we make foods.
Yes, we do.
Now, I know for a fact that I have the option to construct these products under very little supervision and do whatever the bloody hell I like to a certain degree.
Yes.
Luckily, we are an ethical company that with code of ethics of first do no harm. Now, if I was told that, and if I made products or my business ran on products that were full of sugar, and I'm told that now my products are going to be 20% more expensive and that sort of stuff, what would I do? I would probably make some changes to my processes to make my cost of goods cheaper so I could bring the price down to compensate for that 20% increase. And so I could show those sort of things. Alternatively, I could also maybe not add the sugar, because that's what they're probably trying to encourage is industry not to add the sugar, because you're going to do it. So what I could do then is add natural sugar. For example, I could get honey and add honey instead.
Yeah.
Now, I can get honey from bees. Bloody expensive, and the vegans don't like it because it's cruel, because we tricked them into giving us honey instead of just having fun like they do. They run around the forest and
you know what stuff. I could do if I was a food manufacturer.
Yeah.
You know what you could do if the sugar tax came in.
I could make high fructose corn syrup and call it honey.
You could, or you could even add even more sugar. Now follow me out with this, and take out some of the more expensive ingredients like the vitamins,
oils
or
and the vitamins and minerals and fibre.
So that's more expensive than sugar.
Yeah.
So you could actually drop the price by adding more sugar, even though it's taxed.
Even though then the cost of goods would be more expensive, the
less,
retail price.
Because you're taking out the expensive stuff.
You've taken out the cost of goods of all the gourmet good stuff and just filled it up with cheap sugar.
Like a multivitamin, if you wanted to make one that's really cheap, you just add loads of ascorbic acid in it.
Because I know for a fact, if I contacted suppliers, if I contracted my honey suppliers and that sort of stuff, I could say, look, I just want glucose syrup labelled as honey.
Yeah,
they'd do that.
Yeah,
you could do that same sort of thing. So I could basically go. You've seen. Actually, I don't have to make up this bullshit story. They make fake honey.
Yeah, they do.
It's called vegan honey.
Yeah,
it's just a glucose syrup with a bit of colouring.
Yeah.
You can buy maple syrup as maple syrup from maple trees, or you can buy maple-like syrup. I don't know what they call it that, but it's basically, again, a glucose syrup with a bit of a flavouring agent. It's not maple syrup, but you could then go and add that bloody thing in to your product as an alternative. The most likely scenario is everyone's going to go, yeah, man, we're going to save the world. We're going to use sweeteners. Because you know for a fact that's what they're going to bloody do. Yeah. Everyone's just going to load up sweeteners. So we've just gone through the most horrendous 50 years of health, because of this bullshit experiment with the food pyramid, and then taking our health for ransom to fund industry, and now we're about to, if they implement a sugar tax, we're about to embark on the next 50 years of experimenting sweeteners.
Well, Albert Einstein, I think, said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah,
and the last 50 years that you mentioned, it's been an absolute health disaster in this country.
50 years ago, when they did publish some papers to say that sugar's fine for your heart disease, they did say there is an indirect link, however, how sucrose may contribute to heart disease, but you don't have to worry about that because it happens via the microbiome. So in 1965, they published to say that sugar screws around with your gut flora, the bugs in your guts, and that's how it can contribute to obesity, not by the energy, not by the calories, not by any of that. We already know, and we've got all the evidence and the published data that we know for a fact that sweeteners screw with the microbiome and contribute to obesity and heart disease.
Of course they do.
So if we implement a tax that says don't add sugar to your food, only use natural forms of sugar, then you're going to have all these people jacking up all these highly refined foods that are just sugar. So instead of seeing sucrose added, it's going to be dehydrated cane juice. You know what I mean? These people are going to write this bullshit because there's ways around that. They're going to do this sort of stuff. You know it. And if they don't, they're just going to be filling you up with sweeteners. Yeah. We know that if you basically refine the sugars and call it something else and it's the same thing, it's still going to cause bloody heart disease.
Of course it is.
But you don't have to pay the tax. If you add a sweetener, you don't have to pay the tax.
And you can put less sugar in.
And we're going to go onto this wild-ass campaign of all these bullshit new sweeteners coming out of everywhere. Everyone, and you've seen it already. There's this massive movement towards sweeteners and there's huge amounts of research going on to I don't give a shit if it's natural or not natural. It's the same bloody thing.
It's sweetener.
We're looking at highly refined things that do weird stuff.
They do.
You know?
Funny.
Nowhere have they ever said that fibre, modbiotic compounds, the polyphenols, natural levels of vitamins.
Yeah.
No one's done anything towards fixing our actual food because everyone's talking about refined foods and packaged foods.
And the education has been a miserable failure in this country because people are still selecting. Like let's say I wanted to be healthy. I went to the store and I would look for the star rating. I'd get Wheat Bix, I'd get Milo, I'd get cow's milk because that's got a high rating. And I'd be thinking, this is beautiful. Yeah. I could have a Wheat Bix and milk for breakfast. I'd have a Milo and milk for lunch. And, then I'd have those sandwiches, high fiber, white, whatever you call them, multi. Yeah.
I sat in a dietitian report one day and they told you it's fine to have up to 16 slices of bread in a day.
16.
And I'm just sitting there, how many slices are in a loaf?
Oh, I
don't even bloody know.
I haven't bought one for ages.
8 sandwiches or something?
But you've got to remember that bread is about 60% carbohydrate and it turns into sugar in the body.
Yeah.
So it's like having, sugar. Yeah. It turns into sugar.
Yeah, and the rate, and this is the big point. When you give sugar by itself in a soft drink or something like that, it just straight in as that. It just does that thing. But when you've got those sugars naturally part of a food, where you've got these polyphenols. Now, I keep talking about these polyphenols. For those that don't understand what I'm saying is, Polyphenols are the bitter poisons that live in the peels, the seeds, the skins that actually stop bugs from feeding on the sugar inside the fruit. But they have an astringent, they're dry in your mouth and that sort of stuff in your mouth. They got a bitter flavour. So typically they're removed out of foods as much as possible for processing techniques. Sure. You know, it's like the white part of the brown part of the wheat and the brown part of the rice and all that sort of stuff. We have that. We like white bread. We like white rice. So we've lost all those polyphenols.
Yep.
The whole point is when you feed your gut sugar, the bacteria will feed on that sugar. They're also supposed to be kept under control by the polyphenols. Then we're supposed to have a seasonal diet where we change. Without it, our gut flora continues to grow. It gets overwhelmed, creates a lot of inflammation. Through that mechanism can create obesity, heart disease, diabetes.
Right. Okay. Let's analyse that.
And so can sweeteners.
Yes. Now you're talking about high levels of a bug in the gut called the firmicutes.
Yes.
Now, firmicutes can cause insulin resistance.
Yep.
They cause inflammation. They also can extract more calories out of the same food, which is interesting, about 150 calories per day. So if you've got too much of these firmicutes because you're eating too much sugar because you've been listening to a dietitian or something crazy like that, or the government, I don't know why you do that, but let's say you are, then you've got these firmicutes that are high, and that also suppresses your basal metabolic rate.
Yeah.
So you get a reduced basal
slow your
metabolic
metabolism,
rate. Increase your calories, and cause insulin resistance. So they cause metabolic disease. So these poor, I've seen women who slog it out at the gym every morning, and they've struggled to lose weight. Their thyroid's fine, and they go to the doctor and they feel tired, and they eat they look at a cake and they get fat. You've ever known those people?
Yeah, I know.
These are the firmicutes.
I dated them.
I'm married now. I don't have to date anymore, so I don't have to.
Actually, I married one of them.
Yeah.
Well, she was size 22. She's size 10 now. We're allowed to say that stuff. She lost 70 kilos, or 60 or 70. I can't do math.
Extraordinary.
She lost 60 kilos in 7 months.
That's amazing.
By fixing the insulin issues,
Yeah, and that insulin issue is, if you're insulin resistant, your liver is going to make more sugar because the things are low in sugar, and it's going to make it from your muscle.
Right.
So you're never going to tone up.
Yeah.
And as you make sugar, it doesn't just turn back into muscle. Unfortunately, it turns back into fat.
And when we talk about insulin resistance, the early signs of insulin resistance is failure to build muscle.
Correct.
Because you're resistant to insulin-like growth factor, which is
IGF-1.
our main anabolic compound that stimulates muscle growth in response to eating carbs.
Absolutely.
And so if you eat the carbs, you don't get the muscle. The muscle can't even take the sugar that you've eaten, so it sends it to fat.
Exactly.
Then what happens is your fat's constantly in a state of flux. It doesn't just sit there and hold it. It constantly releases fat back into your bloodstream.
Yep.
As this fat is floating through your bloodstream, it creates insulin resistance.
Yes.
And that's the vicious cycle.
Yeah,
so if you've got fat in your bloodstream, your body can't burn sugar very well.
That's right.
So the key is, and this is what these studies have shown, if we reduce that sugar intake, it starts to utilize some of that fat that's in the bloodstream for fuel, which then lowers the fat in your bloodstream, reduces the amount of fat in your bloodstream that can contribute to heart disease and insulin resistance.
Reduce the amount of fat off your ass and gut and all that in the same process.
And if you have a certain amount of body fat, your body is releasing that fat into your bloodstream.
Yes.
And that's why your body responds differently to carbs than your trainer's body does, who does not have that body fat.
Correct.
So when your trainer is sitting there going, I can eat 60% of carbs in a day, and 30% of that can come from refined sugars post-workout, dosing up, that sort of thing. And if you can't do that, then you're a fat liar.
Yes,
that's what really bugs me, because you need to know that your body, if you've got too much fat in your bloodstream, your body doesn't process carbs the same.
That's exactly right. And if they're not a trained athlete, this is the people we're targeting this at, is you've really got to cut the sugars down. And people say, are carbs good or bad? It depends on where you get them from. Like I eat loads of vegetables every night, starchy ones, but I don't have grains.
They're the ones that aren't the bloody problem.
No.
So, hey, an interesting thing, while we're just talking about it, because I did touch on the fact that sugar causes heart disease via the firmicutes and that in the gut. I did say that it's an absolute consensus that, and I shouldn't have said that because only that other idiot would say that. No, I did say that it's well established that sweeteners can contribute to microbiome and obesity. Did you want to expand on that study that was published recently that That's not in everyone?
No. In Nature, in 2014, a paper came out and it was titled, gut microbiome, blah, 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 sweeteners cause insulin resistance via gut microbiome. Huge paper. It was amazing. So what happens is when you have a sweetener, remember, if you have a sweetener like, let's say, sucralose, the beauty or the good thing, I'm going to use that in inverted commas, the good thing is it's a sugar that's not absorbed.
Yeah.
So it goes straight through you.
Yeah.
And guess what it does on the way through?
Microbiome.
It upsets your microbiome because it's a fake sugar, it's a fake chemical that's not absorbed, it goes straight through you. So on the way through, of course, it upregulates, firmicutes, downregulates bacteroides. So you develop this massive inflammatory process in your body which drives insulin resistance because inflammation
in some people.
Yeah, in some people, if their microbiome's out.
So in some people, they take with a certain microbiome.
Yes.
They have these sweeteners. And in their particular microbiome, it'll create a calorie yield or an inflammatory state that contributes to obesity.
Yes.
In other people that have got a different microbiome, the sweetness does not...
it affects it, but it doesn't...
They're not as responsive to the sweetness. The microbiome does not change as quickly.
That's right, because they're usually fitter or healthier. So you've got to remember, a lot of people who go on sweeteners do it to reduce their calories because they've been told that's the best way to lose fat. They said, it's all about calories in and out. Now, we've busted that myth a billion times, but this is another way to bust it. So they've been told they've got to cut the sugar out and have a diet soft drink instead. Try that, something simple. The Diabetes Association recommends that. Crazy idiots. And so what happens is they're doing that. Their gut microbiome, they've had lots of sugars for a long time, so their firmicutes through the roof. And if they take these sweeteners, it makes the whole thing a lot worse.
Yeah.
And can cause, and they know that because they did a study where, and going back to that study, is that they got these microbiome and they put it into a germ-free mouse and it caused insulin resistance. They then gave that germ-free mouse an antibiotic which is poorly absorbed, metronidazole or vancomycin, which is the other one. And they gave it to that. It killed those bugs in the gut and their insulin resistance disappeared.
Yeah. Now, with those, in part of that study as well, so with the humans, some humans had the sweetness and got fat.
Yep.
Other humans had the sweetness and didn't get fat. So you guys on Facebook that are having that debate, you're both right. Okay. So just agree to disagree and, live and let live.
Oh,
but understand that everyone responds differently. So again, if you're a personal trainer and you've got a customer that's not responding, you might want to take them off the sweeteners because they may have a different microbiome to you.
What we know is that sweeteners are good for nothing.
Well, hang on, what is it? Wasn't there another part of that study where they took the poop out of these humans and made the rats fat?
Yep, they do that too.
So didn't they? So they gave so in the humans, some people ate the sweeteners and got fat, others didn't, but they collect poo from both groups and it made the rats fat?
Yes, it made the rats fat. It gave them insulin resistance.
Yeah.
Which is obesity. When you be insulin resistant...
Is that an indication that maybe those humans that did not respond to the sweeteners hadn't responded yet? Yeah, it might have been that the changes were occurring in their microbiome enough to take that microbiome, put it into a rat and create obesity in that rat.
Absolutely.
But that person might have been training. They may have had other genetic things that had not yet fully developed into insulin resistance from that increased calorie yield, that increased inflammation. It might have just been a period of time before it happened.
It's like absolutely anything. It's like people, smoking's bad for you. We all know that. But there are some people who can smoke till they're 108. And there's a lady who was 105 who put her longevity down to smoking. It's like, no, we know smoking is bad, but for some people, they can tolerate it and they're fine. They might have higher levels of P53, which is a gene that's usually switched off with smoking, anti-cancer gene.
They might have a lot of NRF2 activators in their diet.
Absolutely. They could have other factors.
So basically, with a sugar tax, if they implement a sugar tax, my thinking is the broke, low socioeconomic people... It's going to make bugger all difference. They're not suddenly going to go stop buying my $5 Macca's meals to buy a $30 vegetable meal.
Correct.
It's still, and if they're using things like Uber Eats and those sort of things, those things aren't going to bloody available.
Yes.
Because in their low socioeconomic suburbs, the only thing you can get is fast food.
Yeah, so, and they're going to go to Woolies and they're still going to get the box of Coke.
Because that might be 20% dearer but 50% off.
Yeah, because they may be able to sell cans of Coke, I think, for 50 cents or something. It's going to be 55 cents for a can of Coke.
Yeah, see?
Or, no, 60 cents at 20%.
Yeah, man. And so it's taxing the refined things is not going to make any difference because the big boys in the industry are going to they'll add honey. Yeah. That's like a high fructose corn syrup or pretend molasses or whatever, or they're just going to go straight through for sweetness. Yeah. And then we're going to go through this We already know that there are concerns around sweeteners contributing to obesity and heart disease. Yet, if they implement a sugar tax, it's exactly what's going to happen. Everyone's going to be running on, natural or artificial sweeteners. They're going to be bloody doing it.
Yeah. They could take some sugar out, add a little bit of sweetener in, have a mix of the both, like I think Coke does now.
Where the research, when you really get down into the research, it shows good quality fats making up 30% of your calories.
Yep.
Lots of fiber.
Yep.
Lots of whole foods because we need the polyphenols. We need the poisons in the outside and the skins and the peels and the roots and all that sort of stuff. We need all of that sort of stuff to control our microbiome, to control the way sugar moves through our body to prevent these diseases.
Yeah, and they're good.
So adding a sugar tax or adding a fat tax is stupid. Yeah. What we need to be doing is actually re-educating people on how to run the food pyramid. Now, is there anything else you want to add to this before I say we're going to do part 2?
There's one thing I want to add, and it's more of a question than an answer. If a sugar tax came in and they taxed the white sugar on something, would that flow on to products like Nutrigain, which had about a third sugar?
Well, that's the theory, I thought, is that if you wanted to add sugar to your Nutrigain, then your product now must be sold with a tax.
Right. What about Wheat Bix, which all turns into sugar anyway? That won't be taxed.
Exactly. No, it won't. And it will get a 5-star tick.
There you go. That's a problem.
And what's the food pyramid going to say? What are the dietitians? I mean, you've just seen the government dietitian. So the government's going to add a sugar tax. Money, money, money.
Yep.
At the same time as they're teaching dietitians to go out and tell everyone to eat sugar.
Well, there's no consensus.
That dietitian's saying eat sugar. She's saying go eat sugar.
Consensus.
It's fine.
Sugar in food does not.
And the
cause
government's
diabetes.
saying, hey, eat more sugar because we're going to tax you for it. Because we're going to make more money out of this.
Where the hell did all this start? Where did it all go wrong?
Well, that's part 2, Master Segway. He's everywhere. He's everywhere. What we're going to do is we're going to come back for part 2, which is exciting.
Master Segway, okay.
You're Master Segway. You should have done that.
I did. I threw it to you. I did that.
And then I panicked. All right. We'll see you soon. Part 2. All right. Action. Hey, g'day.
How you going?
Okay. All right, let's start again. All right.